It all started with a simple question from a little boy that left the entire room in stunned silence, urging Donald Trump to share a deeply personal story about faith and redemption. What followed brought everyone to tears. The town hall in Springfield, Missouri, was packed. Metal chairs were lined up on the aged wooden floor, filled with people eager to hear Donald Trump's speech. Some leaned forward, listening intently, while others sat back, trying to absorb every word. The room felt heavy with the anticipation of what was about to unfold. Donald Trump stood at the podium, dressed in his usual Navy suit with a red tie, looking calm but determined. He took a deep breath before beginning, his voice steady but carrying the weight of experience. Today, I want to talk to you about something very close to my heart: faith. It's something that has guided me through some of the most difficult times in my life. He began, his words immediately drawing in the crowd. But then, amidst the silence, a young voice interrupted. A little boy, no more than 8 years old, sat on his mother's lap and raised his hand hesitantly. "Mr. Trump, does God really stay with us when things are bad?" the boy asked, his voice full of innocence and uncertainty. The room fell silent. Everyone's eyes turned to the little boy, whose face showed a mixture of curiosity and a subtle fear. Donald Trump paused, his brow furrowed as he looked at the young boy. The question seemed simple enough, but it held more weight than anyone could have anticipated. The crowd waited, holding its collective breath, as Donald Trump leaned down slightly to address the child. "That's a tough question," he began, his voice softening just for a moment. "But let me tell you this. When you're facing the hardest times, you may not always see it, but God is there. Sometimes he doesn't show up the way we expect, but he shows up in the ways we need." The boy looked at him, clearly unsure. "But how do you know?" he asked, still holding on to his mother's hand, his tiny fingers gripping hers tightly. Donald Trump's expression grew more serious, and he cleared his throat. He wasn't accustomed to talking about such things publicly, but something about the boy's earnestness made him feel compelled to share more. "You see," Trump continued, "there were times in my life when I felt completely alone, like nothing was going right. But I learned that faith isn't about always having everything figured out. It's about holding on even when you don't have all the answers. And let me tell you, God always finds a way to send help, even if it's not in the way we expect." The room remained still, the weight of his words sinking in. The little boy seemed to understand, and for a brief moment, a small smile appeared on his face. "So even when things are bad, God is still with us?" the boy asked again, this time with more certainty. Trump nodded, his voice calm and reassuring. "Yes, exactly. You're never alone, not even in your hardest moments." The boy looked up at his mother, then back at Donald Trump, his eyes shining with a new understanding. "I'm not alone," he whispered softly to himself. The room was still, but now it was filled with a different energy, a quiet, collective understanding that lingered in the air. A man in the back of the room, who had been sitting with his arms crossed, looked down at his hands, deep in thought. An older woman wiped her eyes with a tissue, clearly moved by the exchange. For a moment it felt as though the entire room was united by something deeper, something that had nothing to do with politics or speeches. It was about faith, about hope, and about the shared belief that, no matter how tough life gets, no one has to face it alone. As Donald Trump straightened up, he looked out over the crowd, his expression softening. He knew that this moment had shifted something in the room. "Sometimes," he said, taking a deep breath, "we think that faith means having all the answers. But it's not about being certain about everything. It's about knowing that no matter what, you don't have to go through it alone." The boy's mother squeezed his hand a little tighter, her face filled with emotion. The little boy nodded slowly, his mind processing the words he had just heard. "Mr. Trump," the boy asked again, his voice a bit hesitant, "how do we know if God is listening to us?" Trump paused, his face becoming more serious as he thought about the question. He was used to answering political questions, but this one felt different. This was a question about something much bigger than himself, about belief and trust in something intangible. "I think," Trump began, "that sometimes it's not about hearing an answer right away. Sometimes it's about the feeling in your heart. When you're lost and confused, you'll often feel a peace, even if everything around you is chaotic. That's God listening. The little boy furrowed his brow, clearly still processing. But what if I don't feel it? What if I'm scared? Trump leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to a softer tone. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to doubt. You don't have to have all the answers to feel that God is with you. The hardest part is trusting when you don't know what will happen next. The room had become heavy with emotion, the crowd feeling the sincerity in Trump's voice. One man in the back, who had been silent up until that point, started quietly filming the exchange on his phone. The sound of the camera clicking every so often broke the silence, but no one seemed to mind. It felt like the whole room was holding its breath. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, don't miss the next story. A new story awaits you every evening.